This is the beginning of our second season of doing the conversation as a television program here at Grafton Community Television. And we began the program with performance of the trio. We go by the conversation, as we've named the show as well. And we have a bunch of quarantine videos of the trio and a bunch of recorded music with the trio. So we're looking for a sort of a different angle to play on it. And the thought popped into my head to do a series of solos, duos, and trios. So we open the show and close the show with a trio performance. But in between, we'll each do something by ourselves, and then we'll make the three possible combinations of two players. And so that was the concept.
So this is returning to us as a trio, but in different contexts.
Right.
You know, like what we've been doing, as you know, is been having, marvelous guests on with each show, where we would do 3 or 4 songs with them, and then a couple by our, a couple as the trio. But so this was kind of a return back, but not entirely.
You did a drum solo. Have you come up with a name of that drum solo yet?
Yeah, I just call it Playing With My Friends.
Playing With My Friends.
Which is, there's a little irony there because it's the one time I'm playing by myself.
I was wondering about that.
But
I know who your friends are.
Right, my friends are here supporting me, and hopefully I'm supporting them when we all get back to playing together again.
Can you talk about your approach to a drum solo? What's your
It's interesting. It's evolved over time. When you're young, the goal often is to try to impress, and you're always impressed with facility, speed, fancy things that are fancy and dazzling. Some guys will do crossover kind of sticking patterns.
Get a visual thing happening.
The visual things, exactly. And along the way, the longer I play, and the more I get involved with jazz, you understand that even though I don't have actual pitches and diatonic relationships between the drums, I'm still trying to think about melodies, and I'm trying to think of, as I often will tell my students, the same elements that are in a Mozart symphony, you want to try to think about that in a drum solo. You want to have a theme. You want to develop that a little bit. You want to repeat it enough that people start to hear it. Then you want to break away from it, develop it, and then eventually, in some way or other, return back to it. Now, this one is a little interesting because I had prepared a little, snippet of a theme that I was going to use, and I did use, and then I got to the end of it, and it turned out Jerry hadn't turned the recording on.
I remember.
So now I've got to start all over again, and I'm faced with the dilemma. I've kind of milked that for what it's worth. Am I going to go back and try and make it fresh again? And for whatever reason, I started all over again in a completely different vein, and picked up a new theme sort of on the spot and tried to develop that, and then swing back to it. And so that, it wants to have a form, it wants to have a shape, it wants to have something that people can hang on to, as opposed to just trying to dazzle them with how fast I can play.
of course, it's a classic bebop, jazz bebop had melody written by, the great Charlie Parker, but we did it entirely different than most people have been playing that song.
Is that right?
It's usually done relatively quickly, obviously with with electric guitar and the band, and but we wanted to try something different, so I played it acoustically, and we put Paul in a minimalist situation, just playing snare drum.
Yeah.
And it was really fun and interesting. Plus, we did it much slower than people do it. Usually they go da 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 da, because that was that was the way Charlie Parker would play it. And then I heard a Sonny Stitt recording where he played it much slower, and it took on a whole other personality.
Sure, absolutely.
So we tried it like a duet like that, acoustic guitar and snare drum, and at a much slower tempo, and I think we came up with something pretty interesting. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Well, it is one of those standards that did come out of Broadway shows. It was the show was called Mr. Wonderful,
Yes,
and
that's
it
right.
was Sammy Davis Jr. was in it, and then later recorded it. But like most jazz standards that came from Broadway shows, the Broadway part is kind of set aside, and then we pick our own way of arranging it. And in this case, it's the groove that I love.
It seems like the groove is what will draw you to a song.
Yeah.
Now, what about that groove? What was the groove?
Well, it's just, like the forward motion
Yeah.
walking down the street.
Did you like that?
And the
Yeah.
chords move in a way that make it fun to play
Yeah.
too,
And,
for
and
jazz musicians.
Yeah?
it also had, for solo bass, it was fun because the melody has kind of holes in it where I can punch in and hint at the bass line,
Yeah.
which also hints at the chords. So, so I can hint at the whole arrangement just from that instrument. So that was fun. It's, of course, a Duke Ellington, Juan Tizol standard from the 30s, and it's been played a lot of different ways. It was probably a big hit for Duke with a big band. But this arrangement we did as a duo, bass and drums, and it's a whole different feel that way. It's a fun groove, a little bit funky maybe even, and fun to play on bass. And so we just treated it a little differently. It's an arrangement that I've had kind of kicking around in my head for quite a few years and played it with different bands, but never exactly as a duo with drums, so that was fun.
It's a jazz standard. It's become a jazz standard. It was a ballad from many years ago, and also sung and had words. But I wouldn't say it's like an out front jazz standard. A lot of people don't know it.
Really?
I would say a lot of people, yeah. I mean, really don't. But it's an excellent jazz, standard, I'll call it. It's got wonderful harmonic shifts. Right from the second chord, you're in a new key.
Really? Wow.
Like I started it in G, and I immediately went up to A flat.
Wow.
And to the key of A flat, even though the chord is, B flat minor 7, E flat 7.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Of course.
It's a habit. I'm a fingering it.
No, it's yeah.
But anyway, the earliest version I could think of, it was by Miles Davis on his Birth of the Cool. I think he had done it. But it came out later on, with Bill Evans playing it and Jim Hall playing it.
And real quick, let's talk about the guitar you were playing it on.
I decided to do it strictly on acoustic guitar.
Did you like it? What was your feeling on breaking out the acoustic? And
I thought it was wonderful, and I think it gave things a different. It gave us a different sound.
Yeah.
And I don't often get to do that. Like I wouldn't do that on a gig unless I was mic'd extremely well, because it would be difficult to hear.
Sure.
But to sit here by myself with the instrument, it worked out quite well.
It was beautiful.
I think probably 1956.
Yeah, I don't know what it's written. Gigi Gryce.
Yeah, Gigi Gryce. This one didn't come out of the Broadway show territory. It was written by a jazz player. And I first heard it sung by Betty Carter, a vocalist. But it's become a standard. And we did some experimenting with that in the lockdown days with videos where we sent the parts around. So this was a back pocket one too.
when my daughter Hannah was a toddler, and she was very much into dolphins at the time, and she used to have pictures of dolphins taped up on her wall, and that kind of thing. And the song is somewhat related to on Green Dolphin Street, which is a jazz standard that people like to play, but it jumps around harmonically, and it's pretty challenging. It doesn't go where you think it's going to go. So like the first part of the song is maybe reminiscent of Green Dolphin Street, and then it shoots off into other areas.
And is this the first song you sort of wrote for your daughter, or had a title with your daughter's name in it?
Yes.
Yeah?
I've written a number of compositions, but that's the first one that I've written for her.